This episode is brought to you by Hyperice, the leader in advanced warm-up and recovery technology. They have tons of innovative products, like Venom-heated wearables to help soothe sore back muscles, Normatec compression boots to speed up recovery and increase circulation, and Hypervolt massage guns to improve mobility. Loved by athletes like Naomi Osaka and Erling Haaland. Try them yourself. Get 10% off your order with the code MOVE at hyperice.com.
Dreaming of a better sleep? Tossing and turning is not your destiny. And Ollie is here to help. Ollie invites you to sink into sweet, sweet slumber to improve your mental and physical health and overall wellness. More than just melatonin, Ollie's ingredients help you unwind your mind for a delightfully dreamy drift off. Sleep is on the way at Ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
An Olympic champion, an Olympic bronze medalist, plus a two-time world champion. The CV of our guest on this episode is incredibly apt for the organisation she's now heading up, one that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, this Olympic and Paralympic year. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and this is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. This is the behind-the-scenes conversation with the women and the men who run sport in this country. 17 episodes ago, that was number 50 in the series, we welcomed Katherine Grainger to the podcast. So we'd like to start with an apology and ask what has taken us so long to have our latest guest on the podcast.
Hello, I'm Anna Watkins, and I'm the Chief Executive of the British Elite Athletes Association.
So, yes, we would like to apologise, Anna, that it's taken us this long to get you on the podcast. And before we talk about your current role and what an amazing first year and a list of achievements that you've already achieved, but I went back in preparation for this interview to old school. I normally go to Google, but I found my 2012 commemorative book. And so I went in it to have a look at yourself, of course, and Katherine Grainger. And it says in the book, Katherine Grainger and Anna Watkins won gold in the most one-sided race of the entire regatta. Is that how you remember it?
Not quite. I remember there was a really, really strong Australian crew that we didn't know too much about. And the pair of them had been in and out through the season, trying the single, trying the double, and we'd have very few opportunities to race them. So we wouldn't have admitted it at the time, but they had us concerned. We really didn't know what they were capable of. So in preparation for the race, we did so many scenarios. You know, if they had an unexpectedly fast start, if they could sprint, if they threw something at us in the middle, what would we do? How would we respond? And as that race unfolded, I remember, you know, in rowing, there's three critical stages. You want to get out in front so you can see the field, you can see the crews, and I was in the bow seat, so it's my job to read the race and know what's going on there. And if you get out in front, that's obviously a lot easier, and we did that. But then there's this transition into the aerobic kind of middle of the race, and for rowers, you know, that's where the sort of the psychology, how much pain can you deal with? Can you sort of trying to push pain into the other boats and get onto that cruising speed better than the other crews around you? And so for us, I remember coming out onto that pace in the middle of the race and just being aware that, you know, maybe it was only a millimetre a stroke, but we were cruising a little bit faster than this Australian crew, and we moved away. It felt like the Australians were coming back at us, and we were pulling away, and then they were challenging us, and we were coming away, and it felt like a fight all the way down. I remember when we debriefed it with our coach afterwards, he said we were the quickest in all of the segments, but at the time, no, it felt like a battle. It really did.
And the other thing that book reminded me of was the phrase, and I when I was broadcasting in 2012, it was a phrase I used quite a lot, the Dawny Roar. And that is something I'd totally forgotten, this amazing crowd. And I went there myself and cheered many of the crews on at the time.
It was unbelievable. I mean, as rowers, we know we do quite a random niche sport, and you can race in the most spectacular places around the world. But quite often, those lakes are quite far from the crowd. You know, we qualified for the Olympics the year before in Lake Bled, which is the most spectacular place, but you're in the middle of the lake, so you don't really kind of have this engagement with the spectators. And at Dorney, that was just turned on its head. I think the metal grandstands that were there made this, made the lake feel like a stadium, and they amplified the sound. And you sit on the start line of a rowing race, you know, 6 boats side by side, and it's definitely silent. It always is. And the announcer calls the names of the crews. And in that race, in the Olympic final, when they got to Great Britain, you know, there was a time delay. The crowd is two kilometers away, and then you heard it, this kind of rumble ripple coming up the lake. And you know, we had to rehearse that race with no calls in the last 500 meters because of that wall of sound. And you know, it's the most amazing experience to row into that stadium and finish a race with that energy coming at you from both sides.
How often does Katherine Grainger text or WhatsApp or call just to say thank you for being part of that gold medal after that run of silvers?
I mean, Catherine's the most wonderful kind of letter writer, card writer. I mean, she texts, but she's also one of those people who actually, you know, writes a card. And each year on our anniversary, there's always a little celebration and a moment. This is a private moment between us where we can kind of go, you know, we were good, weren't we? That was we really did it that day, kind of thing. But you'd be too awful to do to anyone else. But I think we came out of it with this incredible appreciation of the dynamic that the two of us brought, you know, together. The separate experiences that we had, because I'd raced that race, you know, you'd mentioned the bronze medal in Beijing. That was the same event, and it was a very close race, and we were only sort of 6 inches off the gold medal there. So I really felt I had unfinished business and quite a lot of experience in that event. And Katherine had moved across from racing the quad and basically every other boat but the double. But of course, with all that racing experience that Katherine has, she's just got this instinct, this red mist, this love of that cauldron and this excitement about it. Whereas I spent a long time being terrified of that. And I'm so analytical. I just want to understand it, break the problem down, you know, solve the problem of how to win the race. And Katherine just wants to race. That was, we felt like we both hugely benefited from that other perspective. But for me, Katherine brought me out of myself and made it possible to enjoy that level of pressure, because it was infectious how much she enjoyed it. And for her, I think, you know, being able to sort of delegate responsibility for looking at graphs and biomechanics and getting excited about that kind of thing was quite a relief for her as well. So, you know, we enjoyed that partnership. We hugely enjoyed it over the 3 years that we did it. I don't think anything will quite sort of come close to that in terms of a working dynamic.
Someone, a very close friend of mine actually, said to me relatively recently, "Are you still banging on about the London Olympics? And brutally, are you still making money out of the London 2012 Olympic Games?" Do you ever get tired reflecting on that moment in time?
You know, I think the distance helps, because I think, like all retired athletes, you do have to face this reality that, you know, the biggest moment is behind you. And for me, you know, I was only 29 when that was, and you know, you can't really face up to the fact that, you know, you're not gonna beat that at that age. And so, you know, there was a while when I didn't want to look back, where I just thought, you know, I've got to make life work now without Olympic rowing being in it. I've got to find a new way. But now there's enough distance from it that is about reminiscing, and you can reminisce with the people who were there at the time who are old enough to remember it and so on, then that is fun. Yeah, I'm not ever going to get bored of that.
And so retirement came pre-Rio, because you started going back into rowing after 2012, but then you didn't compete it in Rio. How was then that journey to become CEO of the British Elite Athletes Association?
So I think that, growing up as a child of Thatcher, I thought I could do everything, thought I could do it all. And I had my children straight after London and thought I'll go and be the person who goes back and has goes and does the Olympics with babies in the rowing world. I'll go do that. And I think the reality for me was, rowing for me meant 100% commitment to that crew and that person and that project. And having a family felt the same, that had to be number one. And I really, really struggled with the idea of having two things that morally and emotionally felt like they had to be number one in my life. And I got to feeling that, I got to realization actually that, maybe having it all didn't have to be in parallel. Maybe it could be in series. And, maybe I was actually really lucky because I had been able to have this career and I was able to have this family. So I had that period of life after London with young children, and I was still feeling, I have to have a career. I've got to have something, an identity beyond this. And I went to McKinsey. They just acquired a data analytics consultancy that they were integrating, and this is super exciting for me because I'm a geek. I did a maths PhD when I was rowing, and I thought, it's about performance and it's about maths and it's about how the world works, and I don't know how the world works, so I've only been rowing. So I really want to understand that, and so that was a great kind of rapid learning experience into the other side of life. But most people would sort of understand that sort of consulting world and the pace of that was also not amazingly compatible with family life. So I tried to find the thing that balanced me feeling like I want to make an impact, I want to give something back, I want to do something useful now, but at the same time I've got the boys, and I'm really don't want to hide from the fact that they are the be all and end all at this stage of life. And the Athletes Association, it was the British Athletes Commission, I'd been involved with earlier on as an athlete director, as a board member, so I kind of knew what the organisation was about and what it was trying to do, but also knew it was a difficult organisation, difficult to run and get right, and to be sometimes in that challenging position in sport, that it can be difficult to engage with athletes because they want to focus on their performance until they've got a problem, and then they do need somebody. And so I felt like I had a really good feel for it, and it's a project that I felt that I could do something with, that I could contribute to, be in the sporting world and make an impact. And that's hugely motivating for me.
And it seems, Anna, that it's a project and an organisation, an association that's really close to your heart, and that you think you can make a difference.
I believe so. We're quite clear that we've got 3 jobs to do. We've got that support element for athletes who are facing problems right now in their world, whether that's with selection, with a dispute that's going on, with emotional support. But that's only a bit of being an athlete. Hopefully, it's a tiny bit of being an athlete, and hopefully that's not what being an athlete is for most athletes. So it's also about being there to represent the voices of all of the athletes, make sure that those are listened to and heard, and in the room when decisions are getting made. And those athletes that need to be in the room can't just be the unhappy ones. They've got to be the ones that the system is working for as well, because we've got to know where the strengths are. And so I'm really passionate about getting a spread of athletes to make a real input into this, and athletes have a great understanding of what it takes and what's needed. And then the third part is, most athletes, if you talk to them about what the highlights are, they'll talk about the Olympic Village and those few moments where they get to be an athlete beyond their sport and be, connect and get to know other athletes. And that's something that I think is a really precious and important part of being an athlete, is feeling that shared experience across, the whole of, Olympic and Paralympic sport. And that's something that I think we can provide as an athlete association. And, if we can, we're not nailing everything yet. We're little, and we're still growing and developing. But I think if we get those three right, then we are serving the athlete population as a whole, and doing that sort of authentically from the point of view of what can athletes do for other athletes, and what's our job to do. In some ways, it's easy philosophically, because you just kind of think, what's best for the athletes? What's best for the athletes all the time, and that kind of informs everything from there.
Do you feel then to lead the organisation, you have to be someone that's experienced being an elite athlete? I
think it helps. It helps in a bunch of ways. We have to go into rooms and say what we think, and there's a lot of strong characters. And if you've been there and done it, then the credibility that gives is, I'm not going to deny that's helpful for us. But at the same time, I'm 40 and the athletes are 20, and I don't necessarily know. I'm not necessarily totally in tune with how the current generation thinks and feels. So I have to temper what I think I know with really listening and engaging with the current cohort.
I remember when we were making our Anything But Footy takeover podcast for what was the British Athletes Commission at the time, and as we were doing that, your recruitment process, or the process to recruit you, was happening as well. What was your pitch when you were interviewed? What did you say you wanted to do with the organisation to take it on in your first 12 months, for example?
Back then, the organisation had really built a base of expertise and credibility in the support function, and the team had done an amazing job supporting athletes through the White Review, helping athletes to provide evidence to that review, and getting the review underway in the first place. And I could see the impact of that, and the fact that there was a moment in time where the system was really acknowledging that athletes as a group needed to be given perhaps a bit of a bigger role in how things were done. But the way that we were able to operate then was reactive. We tended to come in when there was already an issue, and try to make things better after the fact. And the huge opportunity that I could see coming in was to genuinely move the organisation into a proactive space, and try to understand the root causes of the issues, get into those conversations, and start to try to influence the direction of travel of the system as a whole, so that we didn't get the same types of cases again and again. And then also within each governing body, build a sort of constructive relationship within each organisation, where we're offering workshops, and to be an independent observer in selection processes, and to sort of help the organisations get their athlete leaders and representatives in place and well trained and so on, so that the athlete voice is working within that sport, but also that there's a chance for stuff to be aired and listened to and acted on before you're in the middle of a grievance or a disciplinary process, which nobody wants. It takes up everybody's time. Everyone's upset. You never get happy people at the end of it. And unless you're learning from that and putting it back in at the beginning, then kind of what are you doing? So I felt that was the big moment to seize, and the organisation was trying to go in that direction, and so I've put some things in place, and I felt that the thing that I could do was to move that on a few gears. There's challenges with that proactive approach, because what it means actually is moving closer to the system, building. We're careful about use of the word collaboration, because do we build? If an athlete's in trouble, is it better that they see us as totally independent, or as somebody who really understands the system that they work in? And there's some philosophical questions about that. Do you want to be, if you're totally independent, you're not in the room and you're not influencing anything. But if you're seen to be too close to the center, then maybe you're less safe to some athletes. Maybe you're more safe to other athletes because they think, oh well, to call the BEAA, I'm not going behind anyone's back. I'm not doing something my coach would hate. It's been recommended to me that this is my organisation to go to. So it's a fine line to judge. But I've moved us a little bit closer to the system and to the centre and into those conversations deliberately. Because I think that's how we can make most impact and benefit for athletes. But there's risks to that, and we always have to walk that line of, we are independent. Our members own us, and they voted, and they are the athletes, and they vote at the AGM. So that's who we serve at the end of the day. But I believe that getting in the room and influencing strategies is more useful than deciding not to do that on a point of principle.
This is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. We're in conversation with Anna Watkins, CEO of the British Elite Athletes Association.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
This is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy, and we're talking to Anna Watkins, the CEO of the British Elite Athletes Association. Have we come up with an alliteration yet? Is it BIA or BAAA? Or
we're supposed to go for the BEAA. We decided that was the easiest thing to say.
I was going to ask you what you talked there about, or we just heard you talking about some of the things that you wanted to do and what you've achieved. One of the things that leaps out for me from afar, the Athlete of the Month and the Year awards was something that I knew that you'd brought in, and I think, and that as a Olympics fan, it kind of gives me an overview of what's happening each month. What's the thing that you're proud of?
I've got to give credit to Ben Mountain, our head of comms, who came up with that idea. But I love that idea because the unique thing that I think we can do as a collective of athletes is truly understand what it is to be an athlete. And often, the media perspective is just way shinier than the reality. The cameras come for the Olympics, particularly in a sport like mine. And I was aware that there are shared experiences that athletes across all sports have. They get injured a lot. They have to do, boring training. They have to go out in all weathers. They have to row or train through the snow. They don't get to, they get to wuss out of anything. They're away from home a lot, And I wanted to bring out this understanding of what it feels like to be an athlete and how other athletes understand that to help develop the sense of community. So that's what I love about that award, because I think it allows other athletes to recognize that when they see something another athlete has done, which might not be winning, but they know what that would have taken to overcome or so on. I'm really, really proud of that. I think the other thing that I'm most proud of at the moment is we're at the point of formally appointing an athlete advisory group. It's got going a little bit informally, but this is something that has been taken on as a sort of white review policy response that athletes should be involved in, should have the opportunity to input into decision making and policy. And I wanted to make sure that was happening within UK sport, because a lot of the policies that affect athletes are written there. There's all of the finance stuff, the way that selection policies have to be. There's now maternity policies and eligibility policies and all of this kind of stuff, and it's quite dry. But UK sport are really, really keen to have athlete input into that, and it's quite hard for them to figure out who and how and what do we do, and who do we call on. when we need this to happen. So there was a definite pull as well, which was great. Really, it wasn't a difficult thing to figure out in the end, but to put this group together, and athletes who are willing to put their hands up and say, I'll go through the policy and have a look at it, and I'll come to this meeting. And we've got this group of athletes who are so constructive and so have this ability to think beyond their own sport, beyond their own situation, and really consider things. And we have a system that is now absolutely ready and willing to work like that, and to put those two things together. And I hope to see it much more in action over this coming year. I think that's it's a huge thing for athletes, and to know that there are athletes in those conversations when those policies are being written.
And you talk about some of the policies and some of the big things, and not just big things in sport, but big things in society. So we talk about, and we've had recent guests on this podcast, Hannah Mills and Eve Muirhead, athletes that have things to say and causes that they're passionate about. But things like safeguarding, things like gender equality, things like mental health training, these are all big societal issues. They're all big issues in sport, and they're all on your desk and in your intro. Yeah, absolutely. And we have to be led by the athletes as to what our priorities are in those areas, because there's so much we could do. We survey the athletes. We each time we visit with a sport, we collect feedback as to what is concerning the athletes, and it's important to do that actively rather than just wait for the athletes who are so upset that they're going to actually phone up. And then we have to work on those things on their behalf, and we won't be able to do everything all at once. And a lot of those issues, you'll get disagreement amongst the athlete population as well. So we won't necessarily be able to take a single position, but to be able to say this is actually super important to the athlete population, and let's engage on this. Let's find out as much as we can. Let's bring the conversation to the right place at the right time. Advocacy is hard, because if we could just do that, and we could just get into shouting matches with people. So we do genuinely seek to understand all the points of view. And as I said before, our approach at the moment is very collaborative and constructive. And the reason that we're able to operate like that is actually because those conversations are welcomed at the moment. So you won't see us having big campaigns in the press and in the media. When that's happened in the past, with other organisations, it's really hard on the athletes, to be suddenly the face of something when they're trying to focus on their competition. It's hard on the sport, and it's hard on the system. So if there's a better way, if there's a grown-up conversation in a room that moves things on, that protects performance, which is what the system's here to do, then that's the way we'd like to go about things. And as long as we've got people around us willing to work constructively like that, that's what we'll do. I'm interested as well, because in elite sport, and John and I obviously cover elite sport as journalists, reporters, podcasters, whatever, we talk about the cycle. And we know at this point of recording, we're very late on in the cycle to Paris and the Olympics. And I'm sure that your members will be talking to you, some of them, about qualification and selection over the next few months. But within that cycle, do topics rear their head more at certain times of the cycle than others? I'm thinking, when I spoke to a lot of the athletes in Tokyo, there was lots of conversations at the end around mental health, for example, and the toll the delay had taken on them. Do you have a busy time in the cycle and a quiet time, for example? So each year in its own right, obviously has a rhythm to it. We do a lot of work around selection. So the peaks of program selection and event selection keep us busy. And then actually, ironically, it's when the big competitions are on through the summer months that we can get our heads down and get some project work done. So it does ebb and flow. We find with athletes through the cycle that the Olympic year is the pressure cooker year, and that means that the lid is more firmly on
and that the lid can get blown off more explosively if stuff goes wrong. So it's, this time it's when athletes are in contention for Olympic selection, that is their overwhelming priority, and they do not want to rock the boat. They don't want to do anything that destabilizes the program around them. They're totally tuned into that. But then a bit later on, when people have been deselected, perhaps, or post games, that's when you can start to hear, actually, this is what has been going on over the years, is what we've been putting up with. But particularly in Olympic year, you wouldn't expect to hear that at the time, because people are, eyes on the prize.
You mentioned about Paris 2024. That actually is a bit of downtime potentially. Will you be watching? Are you going out there? Are you still a rower, Anna?
I'm still a rower. Well, our team will be busy. I'm doing them down. They provide full coverage of helpline support, in-person support if needed, through games time. So that's absolutely on offer to our Olympians and Paralympians. And then of course the ones who are staying behind at home, who are weighing up whether to retire, whether to go on, there'll be work to do with them as well. So our team will be busy, but perhaps we won't be in selection meetings and appeals with quite the same intensity. For me, I am a bit funny about it still with the Olympics. I do find it that I like to watch it. I know I like to see the rowing, but I don't want to be too close. I want to perhaps watch it on the TV, and if things get a bit much, then I can just go and make a cup of tea and pretend it all doesn't matter, something like that. I need my escape routes, and so I might take the kids over to see one or two things in Paris, but I think I'm more comfortable on the fringes these days.
I'll finish as how I started, where I went to a book, and rather than going on the internet and Googling, I went to a book and I found this famous phrase that we've all heard, where it says world champion for 1 year, Olympic champion for your life. And I wondered, and it got me thinking, because there's been lots of things in the media in the last couple of weeks. Owen Slot did a really good article in the Times the other week about how football was dominating everything. And hey, we set up a podcast saying anything but footy. Please, let's talk about something else rather than footy. I wondered whether, as more and more media are just focusing on the so-called big sports, and look, the World Championships, Aquatics Championships, is taking place this week in Doha. British diving have won more medals than ever before in that competition. But are we saying by that statement, world champion for 1 year, Olympic champion for your life, in effect, none of this matters until this summer?
It matters. It matters. If you get, for the athletes who are fortunate enough for it all to come together, and they get a gold medal on the day, then the rest of it becomes the backstory. Absolutely it does. But for most athletes, that they won't win the Olympics, and that world title, that medal, that's being selected to represent your country is everything. It's their identity, their being. It's what they put 20 years of their life into, and every single person within that has, as you guys know, has an incredible story of, there's absolutely nobody who has a powder run to a world championships, and in any sport ever. Everybody has something. Everybody has battles to fight and dragons to slay. So I think it will never stop fascinating me. All of those stories in the smaller sports, and I love the smaller sports, and I love actually this quirky world. Where the Olympics rolls around with a huge carnival and then rolls off again, because there is something magical about those sports that do it, despite not being in the spotlight, and the athletes who do it without any expectation of a big payday. Even if they win, there's a spirit of amateur sport actually in the Olympics. In all its wonderfulness, and we know that things are lost when things turn professional, and when sport becomes overwhelmingly about entertainment. There's a purity about smaller sports, niche sports. That's something that's super close to my heart. And the other thing is, in our world, there's something for everyone. There really is. It's hard. I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. They're not footballers. Why would they be? They come from rowing parents. And it can feel like that's the only, being good at sport is being good at football. And if we don't get these other sports their due space and due attention, then we'll have a generation of people growing up thinking, if you're not good at football, you're not good at sport. And that's, that's a load of rubbish. There's every shape and size at the Olympics. It's a thing that I remember walking in to the Olympic Village the first day that I ever did back in Beijing in 2008. Wow, what different shapes and sizes of people get to be the best in the world at something. And I think that's that's a huge message for that's important for the country, the state it's in. So I love our little world, and I'm torn between wanting it to have a bigger profile and wanting to keep it in all its specialness for what it is.
I love our little world. What a great phrase to end the podcast on. Anna Watkins, CEO of the British Elite Athletes Association, or the BEAA, as we've now been told to call it. Thank you for speaking to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.